I'd like to thank all of you for being here tonight and making the time. We have a few important issues to talk about. One of those issues is public safety. And then we'll talk about I don't know whether to call it a proposed development or a proposed use or an idea that someone has for a restaurant, fast food place on North Lake Avenue. But my policy has always been very clear. If someone has a proposal for a development in our district, then I think that information is best shared not in a private setting, but in a public setting with the people that I represent present. And so I want to thank you for taking the time to have come out tonight to hear whatever the proposal may be. I'll be hearing the information for the first time with all of you. Let's first talk a little bit about public safety, and then we'll get into planning issues and a little bit of an update on some of the issues or some of the improvements that are being made along Orange Grove that many of you have asked for an update on. So before I do that, why don't I start by introducing some of the staff that are present here today, beginning with our city manager, Steve Mermel, who's here with us. Laura Cornejo, who's our newly minted DOT director. David Reyes, who's our planning director. Where's Michelle? Michelle Bonarise, who's our city attorney. And Jennifer Page, who is our deputy director I haven't told you what she does, for deputy director for planning. And then Mitch Dion, who's our assistant general manager for water and power. And then our police chief, who is here with us, John Perez. And of course, you all know Vanya de la Cuba, our field representative. And Commander Art Chute, who is here with us. So let me just jump into it. So public safety, it's the most important function, in my view, of any municipal government, and ours is no different. We've had some issues, not just in District 5, but throughout the city, and it's not unexpected. Public safety is something that you have to be vigilant about, that you have to stay on top of, whether it's in the neighborhoods or in our parks, sometimes at our libraries, sometimes in the downtown. Wherever the issue arises, then we have to be on top of it. I have pressed the police chief during the budget season and the city manager during our budget season to augment park safety specialists in the parks. And I've done that because I've heard from many of you. I'm looking at Betty Sword and Ralph Ramolino, who I hear from often, about safety specifically at Washington Park and Villa Park in our district. And we have had some issues come up. And those of you that are familiar with Washington Park know the history of the park, know that it wasn't always a welcoming place because individuals who were present sometimes took advantage of the park's geography and hung out in parts of the park where they can't be seen and engaged in activity that we probably didn't want to see. But thanks to the Friends of Washington Park and interested neighbors, some of those issues have been addressed. But they pop up now and then, and I think park safety specialists who are not sworn, who are people who specifically are charged with park safety, just as it sounds, are an important component of public safety in Pasadena. And so the police chief and the city manager have said to me, we don't need more police officers at the moment. They've said to me, we don't need more park safety specialists at the moment, that the number of positions we have are sufficient to keep our parks and our neighborhoods safe. And so I mentioned that only because I plan to hold them accountable to that. And so, you know, one of the things that I plan to hold them accountable because at the moment I'm not convinced of that. And so I've said to the police chief in private, and I've said to the city manager in private, and I've said it publicly, and I'll say it in front of all of you, if you want an opportunity to reorganize the police department, and you believe that you can put more officers on the street without increasing the number of officers in the department, in other words, reorganize it to move more officers to the street, reorganize the department to put more park safety specialists in the parks by reclassifying some positions, moving individuals into those positions, then I'm going to give you an opportunity to do that because I believe that that's why they're there. But if they don't do that, then we have to have a discussion because I don't think the level of service that is provided at times is sufficient. And so the challenge from all of us, I hope all of us, most of us anyway, to the police chief and the police department and the city manager is improve the level of service. And that's all we're asking for. That's all I'm asking for. And if it doesn't happen, then I think it's a subject that needs to be revisited, and we will do that. So with that, that's our police chief's segue to talk to us about public safety in Pasadena. Chief John Perez.
All right, you got me on that? All right, so our public safety, the strategies we use, everything we do is so important, and I appreciate the position that the council member is in to ensure we have as many people as we can in the police department. Over the years, my 34 years, more and more police officers hasn't really dropped crime to a point where we notice it. So for me, I sleep, eat, think, and everything I do is about police work. Everywhere I go, every vacation I take, I look at everything and I study police departments in cities and ways to be safer. I look at everything out there from technology to just plain old simple work ethic for police officers to go out there and do more sometimes. So I look at everything that we're doing. And so right now, the way I look at what we are trying to accomplish is find the strategies that work for our community to ensure that I'm listening to everybody. Do you see a difference? Don't you see a difference with what we're doing? It's easy to ask for more people and more personnel, and you'll pay the price tag, right? And so I wonder if that's always the smartest thing for us to do. So I want to make sure I'm taking care of your needs on both ends from a cost factor and also making sure I'm a good police chief and putting the strategies into play that we'd want. One of the first things I'll talk about really quick is, in fact, the Block 5 and other areas. We are looking at the Homeless Project Committee that we created under the city manager. We brought all the department together into a monthly meeting to talk about how can we do outreach, how can we go out there and arrest those that need to be arrested, how do we lower the impact of homelessness. All these issues we're looking at to build a model. We just started this last month, and I think we have a good pathway to figure out this model. We're seeing an improvement in some areas. I'm not sure if you have, but we're getting some good feedback in return. I worry about cleaning up one area and we just move into another area. That's a concern. Let's get it right. I wish I could say that we're going to eliminate homeless and reduce it by noticeable amounts. I don't know if that's possible because I do think we need a couple of things. Obviously, that they use the vouchers and the shelters that we have, but a lot of them don't do that, number one. Number two, we have some that have severe mental illnesses that just don't know how to use these services. Then we have others that need to be arrested. There was one that was really bothering the businesses on the west side of the city, and we had the officers go out, and in 24 hours we arrested one 4 times. Now you may think, what is that? You can't do that. The nice part was the judge mandated them to services, and he's in services till November. So I've been through this in the 80s when we saw the drug epidemic. We do need a homeless court at some point. This is what we want, I think, the politicians to create for us, is trying to get to that point. So we force them into shelters and places by the courts, and they're mandated to do that. But we're going to do our best. On the crime front, we are also reorganizing the whole department to place the resources where we need them. We brought back the bicycle team last year, if you recall. They've been doing a great job. We need more of them. Thank you for that. So I appreciate that. We need more of them. And I need more of them not just to be working in patrol. I need them to have their own offices with their own boss, with their own strategy. This is a police chief's thing to create strategy for the different resources in the department so they know what their mission is, they know how to go out there and do that, and they work more hand in hand with Hope. So we're trying to get there. So that's going to be important for us. So besides the bicycle teams, we are looking at reorganizing our services in patrol for neighborhood policing. Over the next 2-3 years, what we often do in the police department is we end up moving our leadership, our lieutenants, our service area lieutenants. How many of you had over the last 4 or 5 years, right? You're going to give me like 4 or 5 different names, and shoes will come flying at me. And so this is what we have to do, is create a set of 4 lieutenants for the neighborhood policing that don't move for 2 or 3 years. And we're going to have stability, we'll have missions, we'll have a focus that we all could appreciate. And so that's what we're trying to build. That's a smart way to police. It's better than just putting people out there and changing out the leadership. We need that to make sure we're heading in the right direction. So what I want to do really quickly is bring up Commander Shute, and he's going to talk about stats. Any questions I need to answer from my end and what I'm doing as the office manager for the police department? Yes?
I have one quick question. What about putting cameras up at the Washington Park? Is that feasible?
Cameras are always feasible. You know, the issue becomes, number one, who's monitoring them, right? Personnel goes up. Now, we could just record and see what we get, but most of the time we might catch a crime on there, but we really can't identify anybody. Yeah, so it's difficult. We have to find a way to get at that technology and leverage it for us. So I think there is a way to get in the years to come to try to figure that out. Yes, ma'am. As I leave the mic, social organization to us is everything. The more you all know one another and switch cell phones and know each other, that is the best thing we could do for crime, for quality of life, for everything that we need. We have to connect to one another more often. So that is the one piece of advice I leave for you. All right? And I'll be up here to answer questions. Yes? I'm sorry?
You mentioned vouchers. Where are those?
The vouchers are provided to some of the homeless people. They do have them. They don't always use them.
But we citizens don't hand them out.
No, not at all. They get them from special services. They qualify and do things. Trying to get the homeless to use the vouchers is a challenge for us.
And we suggest to the homeless person that they go where to get the vouchers?
They know where to get them at different places from Union Station and other city facilities. In the housing department, there's places where they're temporary, but it really is hard to have the conversation at times with some. I don't suggest always having that either. So, yes, sir. Let me do this. Let me go out there and look at it myself, or one of my commanders, and then talk to code enforcement myself and see what we could do. Yeah, I know where it's at perfectly, and at times the environmental design of everything that we have go beyond the police or sometimes the city. It involves neighbors and people to come in and have celebrated entryways and have some areas that would be safer for everybody. That takes a team effort sometimes. So let me evaluate that, and I'll make sure I get back to you. I'll give you my business card before I leave.
Can I just ask a clarifying question? Los Robles, just south of Orange Grove.
And so any other questions before I give it to Commander Shute? All right, there we go.
Good evening. So first I'd like to introduce myself. I'm Acting Commander Art Shute, the chief promoted me about 2.5 weeks ago, which I'm very grateful. I was a lieutenant for about 5 years, and the last 9 of my years, I've been an officer for 25 years total, and the last 9 of those years have been really associated with the Rose Bowl and event planning and counterterrorism. But prior to that was all 16 years of enforcement, whether it was in the special enforcement section or vice narcotics. So a array of experience. But one thing that I am big on is communicating with the residents, whether it be you in this district or any district throughout the city, just like I was with the Rose Bowl and the residents around the Rose Bowl. I handed out to those of you that were here earlier my business card. For those of you that showed up and didn't get one, I have more. I will hand that out. On that business card is it's not my cell phone, it used to be, but I'll be more than willing to give it out. I have no problem with that, but yeah, no, it is, it's my cell phone. But my desk line is on there and my email address. And when you have issues like this, it's very important. I don't know if we'll be able to cover everything that everybody has tonight. Surely we'll try. But you can always reach out to me. And one thing I've found is being a commander, you have a little more influence, which I appreciate. And not to abuse, but I have great people that work with me, one of which is Lieutenant Kim Smith. right here, and she's Community Service Area Lieutenant for Service Area 3, which encompasses some of this area. And then Lieutenant Marcia Tagliaretti, who is not here, is Community Service Area 2, which also encompasses a portion of the district. So the districts don't necessarily have just one lieutenant, but what they all do have is one commander, and that's me. So I'm the commander for Field Operations Division and Event Planning and Counterterrorism. So with that, you reach out to me with any concerns, and I will contact you personally, and I will make sure that we address those concerns. So with that, I know there are a few concerns that I've heard about, not necessarily tonight, but leading up to tonight, one of which is Block 5, and I apologize that I have to wear reading glasses.
Block 5 is at the corner of the southeast corner of Lake and Washington.
Yeah, it encompasses that whole intersection, but mostly the southeast corner of Lake and Washington, which has been a big concern with all types of transients and issues like that. But because of that concern, we've deployed our neighborhood action team there. They were deployed there between June 10th and July 8th. And there were a total of 3 arrests, 32 misdemeanor citations, 7 traffic violations, 15 FIs, which are field identification. So field interviews where they'll stop and talk to somebody and get all of their information, somebody that may be loitering. There's really nothing to take them to jail for, but we're getting that information to find out what they're doing and why they're doing it. We've provided 36 foot-be patrols and extra service patrols of 128. So we are being proactive there, and we've had some good response from our efforts there. So there are some more specific things here. I don't think I need to get into those unless somebody has a specific question I can answer on that. The other issue that we have, and the chief talked about it, Councilmember Gordo talked about it, was Washington Park as well. Year to date, from January 1st to August 29th, we've had 32 arrests. Peak calls for service are on Wednesdays, believe it or not, between 3 and 6 p.m. And then the arrest breakdown on that, there's been 7 of those 32 arrests for drinking alcohol in the park, 7 for loitering after hours, 5 for smoking in the park, a couple court order violations, some DV, only 2 arrests for health and safety code violations, which would be narcotic violations, and then there's a variety of single arrests for a variety of things, and only 1 drunk in public. So in Washington Park, we had an operation from April 15th through May 13th, where NAT, our neighborhood action team, the same team that worked on Block 5 at Lake and Washington, they deployed, as well as our special enforcement section, which is our street level gangs and narcotics, and our motor section for traffic violations. There were a total of 12 arrests, 12 field interviews, and 36 foot beats. And on May 11th, Park Safety and Human Services and Recreation held a meet and greet in the park. And on April 23rd, the meeting was held at the park with city departments to survey the park and see what they can do to make it better. I know one thing was mentioned cameras, but there's always lighting. There's always forestry. Forestry is a big thing. You can use forestry to your advantage, or it can be used to our disadvantage, because if there's overgrown trees, bushes, plants where people can get behind, hide under, or feel comfortable where they can't be seen, we need to trim that stuff back. And back to what the chief had mentioned earlier, and I think this is what you were getting to, is citizens are a force multiplier for us. So coming from the Rose Bowl, doing the Rose Parade every year for the last 9 years, you can imagine, I'm sure you've heard it, I'm sure you've all heard it, see something, say something, but that's more important in your neighborhoods as much as it is at a special event. It doesn't have to be a special event. It's in your neighborhoods. You call us if there's a problem and we'll respond. The response time may differ depending on calls for service and the priority of the calls. A music call may not get the same response and wouldn't, and you would expect that it wouldn't as a robbery or a burglary, but we will respond, and those calls for services generate a report for us to be able to look at. And as a matter of fact, what the chief was referring to earlier with the neighborhood policing, we're having a report generated on all our calls for service. And once we get that report back, we're going to be able to identify areas that have the most calls for service to be able to put more officers in those areas. And under one lieutenant, a few sergeants and officers. They're going to be able to work that specific area, and we'll be able to staff more officers during those times that we have higher calls for service. So calling is important, and to think, you know what, I'm not going to call because that's not an important call, or I don't want to bother the police with that. Let us decide if you're bothering us with that and you're not bothering us. You're not. That's what we're here for. Make the calls. If something doesn't look right to you or something in your neighborhood doesn't feel right, that's what we're here for. We're here for you to make that call and for us to respond and for us to decide what we can do with that information. But it's very important. More than anything, you, each and every single one of you, has to feel safe in your neighborhoods, and that's what our job is. If you're feeling safe in your neighborhood, you feel more comfortable going out, being visible. That's more eyes on the street. That's the force multiplier for us, and it enables us to do more. So with that, if there's specific questions, I can answer them. Any type of question that I can answer. I'm going to take these off. I appreciate your comments. I do appreciate your comments, and we've done things as far as training for our officers. Our officers have to do their job. Bottom line, they have to do their job. We expect them to be proactive if they have the right to be proactive. And being proactive means maybe contacting somebody that committed a minor violation, and if they're cooperative, taking it to a different level and asking if you could search them for whatever reason it may be. And it may be something he said, it may be his demeanor. You know, you
don't know that. That's not fair to search. He's saying what it might
well,
be, and I'm
no.
suggesting other things that it
Right. It may be any of that. It may be any of that. I would like to think that's not why. That's not how we train our officers. We specifically have, it's called Why Did You Stop Me training. And basically what it is training on how to be a police officer, how to make a contact like you're describing, and how to treat people with respect. And we preach, and this is why I'm very glad I'm the Field Operations Division Commander, because I have influence over 145 police officers that are, a lot of them are new and don't know how to do this job. Because you can do this job and you can be proactive and you can do it and treat people with respect and dignity, because that's our job. Dignity is what you're talking about. Making sure that you leave them with dignity. That's what this training provides, but that's what our leadership provides for our new officers and our young officers. And I'm not saying that every officer is going to be great. I'm not, because that would be foolish of me. Not every officer is great. Not every officer does the right thing. We see it in the news all the time. Officers make up getting shot and telling their own plea, right? So there are officers that don't do the right thing all the time, absolutely. But I will tell you this, I have a lot of confidence in my officers. I can't speak to that interaction other than what you just told me, because there's always more sides to a story. But if anybody in here feels that you or anybody else has been treated poorly, we have cameras that we wear that we are obligated to put on for every contact. I can go back and look at those cameras. I could have my lieutenants, sergeants look at those cameras and see how that contact went. And we could evaluate the contact, and we can bring them in even if they didn't do anything wrong. And we're doing this now, where we get complaints for people that felt they were wronged by the officer, because it could be this gentleman who has been wronged by police officers before. He had this contact. He says, I don't want to get into it. I was respectful to them. They were respectful to me, but I don't feel good about the contact. He can complain. You can complain on his behalf. We could find out who those officers were. We could look at that camera and we could see how that contact went. And whether if they did something wrong, that'll be handled accordingly. If they didn't, they could look at their contact and we could say, would you do this any differently? And oftentimes they will, yeah, you know what, I could have done this a little different or that a little different. But what I do expect our officers to do to be proactive, because being proactive helps keep your neighborhood safe. If we wait until somebody calls all the time, that's not good, because if somebody has to call, there's crimes being committed. We do a lot of proactive police work. It's just a matter of how we do it and making sure that it's done right. And that's why I'm very happy to be in charge of Field Operations Division, because I was taught under the Pasadena Way, the 5 tenets of the Pasadena Way. One is recognize the dignity of every person and treat them accordingly. We believe in the personal touch. These are things that I grew up understanding. These are things that we're pressing. We have cards that we hand out to every officer that has the Pasadena Way on it, the Why'd You Stop Me training. So we're training them, and it's important to me to hear this information, and I do appreciate your comments.
I do have a couple of follow-ups for the chief. First, the chief should be commended, and the city manager. I mean, if we're going to be critical of them, we got to be fair and say that the chief brought that one of his first actions was to bring the neighborhood action team back to the police department, and the neighborhood action team is very important when you have a chronic issue surface in a park or at Block 5, because you can really have focused policing on bicycles, on foot, and so the chief should be commended for that. The city manager should be commended because he committed to bringing more programming to Washington Park, and he followed through on that promise. We added a total of 2 positions in the budget this year, and that was not easy to do. But one of those positions was a full-time person to add programming back at the park. And I think that will, to Betty's point, that will make a tremendous improvement. So I want to thank them both for that. But we have had a few shootings in the city, and I'd just like the chief to update us on some of those shootings that we've had, not necessarily in District 5, but throughout the city, because I think we don't always hear about them, and I think it's important that people be aware of major incidents such as the shooting.
Thank you, sir. And one of the most difficult things about police work is violence, trying to find a way to reduce it in a community. It's kind of like, I'm sure, for surgeons to go into a body and not damage any other parts than the one you're looking at to remove cancer or something. We try to move into neighborhoods and try to focus on the ones causing these type of problems. We do have almost 4,000 crimes a year that happen in this town. Somebody needs to go to jail for those crimes. We have to find them. The officer's job is to really try to have a balance in doing the toughest part of police work, whether you're going to get out of the car and inspect something that might be a crime or not. If we were right every time, we should probably be buying stocks instead of police work, but it's very hard to predict that to be right every time. So really quick, this year, we've had 4 people shot this year. We've had one killed by a weapon in community arms a couple of weeks ago. It was a national investigation where our detectives had to travel across the country out to other states. They arrested 3 suspects, seized 3 guns, arrested those involved, and the poor individual who lost his life was involved in the transaction with these other individuals, and so that's been resolved. The number of people shot this year has been the lowest that I've seen in my 30-something years here with the city, but that doesn't mean that we're at any end state. We have to do more to prevent it. I'd like to come in and report that there's 0 one year. It'd be great. And so at this point, we keep pushing for that. So we've had 4 people shot. 2 have been over at the community arms in that area. That's always problematic for us in trying to create that social organization I talked about earlier so people talk to one another. So we are looking at ensuring we're following the career criminals who are gang members and trying to prevent something from happening before it actually happens. The most difficult part of police work, I could tell you, of how do we do that? How do we get to that point? We don't want to wait for a crime to occur. So the update for us is our suspects from the homicide are in custody. We don't have any crime trends that we're dealing with where it's a lot of crime in one area because of one group of people. We are dealing with the residential rate burglaries that we usually have. Trying to reduce those is always problematic. School just started. People are gone out of their homes. I ask you to lock your windows, your doors, turn on your alarms, pick up the newspapers, put the trash cans in, take your mail out of the mailbox, and if you can, put a little music on in the backyard to make it seem like you're there. Don't leave your lights on during the day, close all your windows, and make friends on your street so you're all watching one another. That's really the advice I want to give you right now as we start up with school. We'll be into the holiday season like that. We're looking at other stuff. Prevention is where we want to be for all this. More prevention, less of the police officers and the stops that you talked about, sir. So we really have to work as a community to really get to the prevention part that we want. So that's the brief on the shootings.
So, Senora Ortiz is thanking Commander Shute for being responsive. 2 o 3 veces, ¿a qué hora? Dos o tres, I'm supposed to be translating. 2 or 3 times they've called Commander Shute, I'll embellish it a little bit, in the middle of the night, but Really, it was like
9 or 10.
yeah. No, okay, all right. Well, you know, I was 9 or 10. All right, fine. 9 or 10 at night, and I did disclose it. I was embellishing a little bit. 9 or 10 at night on his personal phone, and he's been very responsive, and so yeah.
Que él sepa que ayuda no es esto.
Why is she hugging the chief? And now, okay, yeah. So, okay, yeah, Michelle.
I get it. They respond to calls like a police car. We do have a lot of the more violent crime occurs later in the night. Helicopter gets there in 30 seconds compared to a police car that might take 3-4 minutes, 2 to 3 minutes. So they get there quick. You know, what we have to do, we talk about this all the time at the police department. We try to understand what it's like to have the helicopter flying overhead all the time, okay? So we get it. We get it. If we could buy a quieter helicopter, I'll do that. We're looking at that. That is part of the answer, is a quieter helicopter, surveillance equipment they could go up higher with. Those kind of things are important. Eliminating it, we go back, this is the 50th year of our air services, for 50 years, and having it. And I could tell you the other day, you guys hear about the fire at the 2 and the 134? Our helicopter found that. They saw it first. So who knows where it could have been a minute later, 2 minutes later. So this is, I'm not trying to make excuses why we should keep it. I'm just saying, I understand where you're at. There's a balance here in trying to explain to our air operations to the best they can about being higher. They need to be lower sometimes at nighttime. I'll take this back. We'll have the conversation so they're at least aware of it. It's good when we have the conversation and they're paying attention to it. Okay, so I understand. I really, really do.
The good thing means that you're working.
Yes, absolutely. They do fantastic work. I give you case after case after case, but we're not talking about that. I think it's just the annoyance of the helicopter constantly being over your helicopter. I think that's the annoying part, and I understand that.
I know this is going to rile people up, but what about drones?
Yes, great. Thank you. Real quick, I don't want to take up the meeting here, but drones are a great idea. We're looking at that. We'll put it into play soon, but it doesn't take the place of a helicopter because of the fact that you could use them for hazmat situations. You could use them for certain type of tactical events. They could go to a possible fire and check the hillsides, right? So they have application, but as a general patrol strategy, not good. Not good at all. We need to have the helicopter, but that's not always the answer either. Big giant camera in the sky that there was a question back here. I'll take that back about do we need to be there all the time, number one. We do have the media up there. I've called myself to the media. We could get them away if we can. Sometimes it's a major incident. They're not going to go away. And they're frustrating because you know why? They sit and they don't move. That's not our helicopters, so you know that. But what we can do is tell them to go up higher when they do that, and they'll either leave or they'll go up higher. So hey, you know what? If you got a good idea that might work out the idea. Let people start listening. We have council members to listen to what might be a foolish idea one day actually becomes an idea later on that works. So if there's an idea there, let us know. But we do care. I'll take this back to our air operations so they understand. Thank you.
One of the things you should know, then we'll move on, is the city has invested in quieter helicopters. They have more or fewer blades?
We have, yes. What you have is more blades, quieter.
Yeah.
So we've had a couple that help that out, but there's even more we could make it stealth.
So, in terms of the media helicopters, you should know that it's the FAA that regulates the flight of media helicopters and not the city, and so we're limited. Yeah. Okay. Next, any other? ¿Sí entendieron el reporte que dio el jefe, ¿verdad? ¿O quieren que les? ¿Sí? ¿Sí? Want to make sure they followed the. Next, we're going to give. Sorry.
Business cards I'm going to leave up here. So for those of you that didn't get one, they're right by the agendas. I'm the chief's driver tonight, so if he's leaving, I got to go. Sorry about it. Sorry.
Yeah. We'll call you to pick us up.
All right. Thank you.
What about the lights that are supposed to be facing into the parking lot at Villa Park? The ones that face the street?
The lights that.
Got the street lights. Don, you
So lighting at Villa Park.
We're up to bid on that?
We're supposed to be out to bid on that, but I think but we're still finishing the fencing.
So there are a number of improvements that are occurring at Villa Park that we approved in the capital improvement budget. One of them is lighting, and one of them is the fencing around the soccer field. The fencing is currently in progress, and following the fencing is the lighting?
Yes. No.
Okay. Thank you. Next, we're going to have a very, very quick update from Mitch Dion, Assistant General Manager of Water and Power. Where'd Mitch go? There he is. Just to talk to us about, Orange Grove is a street in desperate need of repair, and not just through District 5, but the whole length of Orange Grove. Very soon, well, currently we're seeing some work done on the water system, and then shortly after that, we'll see the repaving of Orange Grove, and so Mitch can update us.
Thank you. So talking about water and talking about infrastructure is what I like to do. But in brevity, I've got to tell you that we've got some old infrastructure buried in the streets. And those are our water lines. So we had a situation that we were looking at new pavement going from one side of the city to the other. And we decided it would be a good idea to get new water lines in before that paving went in. So commencing this past January, we started working on the improvements over on the western side, in and around Fair Oaks, Sunset, over to Los Robles, trying to do the preliminary work that was needed to get that done. So that work is almost being done. We're putting the final cap on the temporary patches, and that's occurring right now. About 3 weeks ago, we started tearing it up over on the east side. So over on Palo Verde, we're bringing in a 24-inch pipe. So that pipe is taking a little bit of extra time, a little extra construction, and we're going to bring that 24-inch pipe 2.5 miles across the city. That work we hope to have wrapped up before we get to the holidays. If not, we'll have to cap it up for the holidays and finish the work off just after the holidays, after we get through the New Year's parade. And that's the schedule we'll be doing for that. Right after that, as soon as the weather clears and paving can be good, Public Works is going to come through, and we're actually going to pave Orange Grove with a new coat of asphalt, and it's a reconstruct on most of the street from one side of the city to the other. And so the good news is that we'll have new infrastructure out there underneath the street. The street should be in place, and the water system shouldn't be tearing that up for a good many years. So that's the plan. That's what's going on. I appreciate it's pretty uncomfortable driving through. We're doing our best. We look for feedback. If you see days that there's a little more dirt and gravel, we have a comment section on our website, or call the public, call PWP, and we'll go back out and make sure that we get the stuff picked up. Yes, sir. We're working on that, yes, and even your comments, though, do get reviewed. And 2 weeks ago, I was out there bringing the contractor back out about 7 p.m. to make sure that some of that got picked up.
The gravel is definitely reduced below what it was 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, it's, and I appreciate it. It hasn't been as clean as it should be, and we'd sure like to see it better.
And finally, I'm grateful that little line on my water bill that says for infrastructure improvement is being used for infrastructure.
That's an important line on that bill, and we really do have a dynamic infrastructure program, and I would love to share it with you, but that's not what I'm here to do tonight. Yes, ma'am. It was not part of the discussion that I was in. I mean, obviously the road diet was a touchy issue. That's not what we're doing. That's not in the plan. Right. Sir. I'll have to take a look. I'll look at it. It should not be speed bump type of material. On the east side, those are still temporary patches, so they wouldn't exist for the life of the project. But if they're getting that disruptive, the heat displaces things in traffic. So we do have to keep an eye on it. I'll take a look.
If you have a chance for someone to go down there, I'd appreciate it.
Absolutely. Are there any other questions I can answer regarding the water in Orange Grove? It's an exciting project, and we're really pleased and thankful that City Council has given us the authority to go forward and use that infrastructure money in a way that it's intended to do. It's exciting. Thank you.
Oh, Roberta?
I couldn't hear everything. You are not doing a bike lane, is that correct?
He disclaimed all knowledge of even being involved. So, but, so let's briefly talk about the bike lanes. You'll recall that, originally, yes. The answer is yes. Bike lanes were planned. It was what's commonly referred to as a road diet, but turning Orange Grove into, there are different opinions. One opinion is that it was needed in order for bicyclists to traverse the city. Another opinion was that it would cause more gridlock. And our community was very, very divided. It was very divisive. It was causing a lot of issues. And so I asked the City Council to agendize it for a decision because I believe that issue needed to be resolved. I ultimately voted to not go forward with the bike lanes, and this is why. And it's actually very fitting that the water guy be here talking to us as we talk about the bike lanes, because I believe that traffic is like water. It's going to find the path of least resistance. And when the proposal for the road diet on Orange Grove came forward, initially, I supported it. A lot of us, actually, all of us on the City Council did. A lot of people in the community supported it. But then when it came time to implement it, I think we had to recognize that we'd made a mistake. Not because we don't want bicyclists to be safe, but because having the traffic lanes reduced would have pushed traffic into the surrounding residential neighborhoods, because traffic is like water, and if you slow it down on a main thoroughfare like Orange Grove, ultimately, think of your own driving patterns, whether it be guided by Waze or whether it be, just by the old-fashioned right foot on the pedal. You're going to try and find the quickest way. Yeah. What? So I don't want to. I just, in the interest of full disclosure. I know. They're. I should have taken a note from. In the interest of full disclosure, I'm explaining why I took the position that I did. Yeah. And well, it was based. Hold on a second. It was based on the traffic. It was based on the traffic studies that we saw. So, rather than skirt the issue, I believe I have a responsibility to explain what my position was then and is today. I'm open to. We know each other, and we can have the debate again and have the conversation again. And I'm always open to a change in circumstances, but that's why I took the position that I took. So next. Thank you. Thank you, Bob. It's divisive, but you know where I stand. Next, we are going to move on to. Why don't we just move on to the special presentation on Chick-fil-A? Yes.
That's why I was divisive.
Yeah. Thought I'd warm everybody up for. We try to keep Bank of America there. That I'm aware of. The staff did, but Jennifer maybe can provide us an update.
Yes, we don't know the tenant yet, but we do know that it's in the financial field, and they are going to be punching through the windows, and so it's gone through our design commission. So it's a unique design now because it doesn't have any windows. It was originally a bank card center, so it was security based. I'm sorry. And so they're going to be punching openings throughout the whole building and changing the design, and we're very excited about that.
So quickly, Bank of America had a really good long-term lease at that location. It ran its term, and they're gone. So Bank of America won't be there. In terms of having any tools to underwrite a project, to perhaps bring a large retailer in there or some other business, when the governor eliminated redevelopment a number of years ago, we effectively lost the only tool we had to buy down the cost of development projects to try to bring people to town. But the good news is Pasadena is a place where a lot of businesses want to be. Probably now is not the night to do it, but maybe at an upcoming meeting or working with the council member's office, we can send out to you a little PowerPoint we have that shows a lot of the different activities going on around town on the side of bringing in businesses near City Hall. The Alexandria building is taking shape. So there is a lot of activity going on.
Great. Thank you both. And everybody knows the building we're talking about. This is the B of A building across from the convention center. Marengo and Green, yes, on the southwest corner. Yeah, yeah. So it's actually, yeah, a large building. So let's move on to I don't know how to describe it, whether a proposal for Chick-fil-A or an idea for a Chick-fil-A. As I mentioned earlier, I sometimes get calls from developers for development a lot, and I always suggest, why don't you come and meet with me and my constituents in public and present your proposal, and we'll all hear all of the facts and ideas in the same place at the same time. Please, let's, as your councilman, I'm asking that, I cannot form opinions regarding any proposal, including this one, that may ultimately come to the city council. And at this point, I don't know whether or not this matter would be appealed by the proponents or neighbors. I don't know. And so it would be improper for me to say, I support this, don't support this for that reason, this reason. And so don't expect that I will form an opinion and share it with you, especially after I shared the bike lane thing, this evening, because I want to ensure that I'm there at the city council, should the matter ever come to the city council, to represent all of you in this room and the people who weren't able to be here tonight. And so I have to maintain an openness on all of the issues that may be relevant and sometimes issues that aren't relevant to decisions made by the city council that I may need to vote on. So with that, we have some guests tonight that represent Chick-fil-A, and I'm going to ask them to step up. Now recall, this is not a city proposal. The city is not proposing that we open a Chick-fil-A, or for that matter, any other business on North Lake or anywhere else. But this is a proposal by Chick-fil-A restaurant, and I'm going to ask Jennifer Daw, who represents Chick-fil-A, Kelsey Wu, who represents 4G Development, and Kathy Lucker, who represents the Dolphin Group, to come up and talk to us. Thank you for being here.
Well, good evening, everyone. My name is Jennifer Daw, and I am the Principal Development Lead for Chick-fil-A. On behalf of Chick-fil-A, we are excited to propose another location here in Pasadena. I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with our existing location on East Colorado, which was once a former Burger King. But tonight, I think it's really here for us to present this project. I'd kind of like to talk a little bit about our company and to talk also about the project that's in proposed that we would like to present and kind of hear your thoughts, any comments and feedback before we move forward with our next steps in this development process. Just to let you know, we have not formally submitted anything to the city, so this is really just a preliminary discussion, just to talk and hear your comments, and we hope that we can collaboratively work with you all, as our main goal is really to set up a business that will be successful in the community, but at the same time, we know that our business will impact and be within your community as well, too. So for some of you who may not be familiar with the location, obviously it's the existing Carl's Jr.'s. It's about 2,400 square feet in size, and it has an existing drive-through. It's located what's called in your specific plan as the fast food garden area. And so, I know, right? Hey, that's what it says in the North Lake specific plan, so. But our proposed project is to actually demolish that Carl's Jr.'s and to rebuild the exact same 2,471 square feet. That's also due to the specific code where we're only really allowed to rebuild what's the existing square footage on the site. So therefore, our building is about 2,400 square feet. It's a drive-through. It has a dual drive-through lane. It has a walk-up windows for guests to come. And it also has wonderful patio seating. I'm not quite sure if a lot of you are familiar with Chick-fil-A, but I'll give you a little brief history about us just to let you know where we are today as a company. We were founded in 1946 by our founder, Truett Cathy. We created our first standalone restaurants in 1986. And today we have over 2,400 restaurants across the nation, and we are soon to be going internationally. We are privately held. We have about $10 billion in sales, and we have sold over 6 billion signature Chick-fil-A sandwiches. And we like to pride ourselves as more than of a restaurant. We like to say we are where good meets gracious. And by doing that, we have these 5 components that we say. We like to cook, obviously, because we are a restaurant. So everything that we provide in the restaurant is really homemade. It's handmade. You'll see the operator there cooking, breading the chicken, squeezing the lemons for the lemon juice, for the lemonades. We really like to focus on food because obviously we are a restaurant, service and hospitality. And we like to say also that we want to be your home away from home. So we make sure to take care of our customers, just like family, by providing a clean and welcoming environment. We prepare, obviously, just not in a meal, but an experience. We like to focus on providing an experience that with warmth and care for our customers. We also believe that we want to serve and be within the community. In fact, a lot of our operators are involved in a lot of organizations, from the chambers to the junior achievement. We always find ways to partner with such organizations for events over the time. And we also like to hire within the community for team members. I like to brag that this year, actually, at our annual conference, we awarded about $75 million in educational scholarships to about 60,000 team members across the nation. So that just shows that we really do care about our team members and about everyone who comes into the restaurant. We build. So as I said, it started with this one man, Truett Cathy, and his legacy has continued throughout the country, throughout our company. We receive over 40,000 applicants a year for people who express to want to become a Chick-fil-A operator. And once they're selected, the entry fee is only $10,000. So that's why you're not seeing the operator here. You're seeing me here right now, and I will always be working with the community on our proposed projects because we're here to set up the operator for success. We have a team that kind of does all of the strategic analysis and research and development and construction, and then we turn it over to the operator so that he or she can operate it and have a successful income. As you all know, we are closed on Sundays. If you didn't know, we are closed on Sundays. It's more of a practical than a spiritual decision because at the same time, we ask our operators to be involved with the community, to be involved in the restaurants. We also want to give them a day off of rest to spend time with their family as well as their team members. Like I said, we like to just be your home away from home. We also know that drive-thrus are an important part of our success for Chick-fil-A. About 50% of our sales actually are produced through the drive-thru. And we have been referred to the Gold Star standard when it comes to drive-thrus through our QSR magazines for both 2016, 17, and 18, all for efficiency, accuracy, and speed of service and experience. We like to focus on efficient service for our guests, and again, to be that good neighbor within the community. And we are always constantly innovating with a drive-through system, making our service more efficient and accurate. For example, with iPad ordering, mobile carryouts, or mobile ordering, or pushing our Chick-fil-A One app. Just to let you know, just to show how much we are innovated, we were the first QSR to really to add double drive-thrus back in the days, back in the mid 90s. Our operators, as I said, are always fully engaged, and we always will find ways to work with the community within circulation and queuing and stacking, because we want to make sure that there's no impacts on the public right-of-way. With our innovative technology, our operators also utilize the iPad ordering systems, which is that face-to-face, where team members are outside and they're kind of doing like a leapfrog. And our goal is to get our customers on and off the site as quickly as possible. Recently, we've added what is called the outside meal delivery, where our team members are actually more upstream when delivering food to the guests. So at some of our restaurants, you'll see the team members are at the pickup window, and they're actually walking the food back to the other cars so we can get our cars on and off the site in an efficient manner. And we like to also say that we now have our new CFA mobile app, where you can also order before even coming to the site and go through the drive-thru to pick up your food. So as you can see, we're very innovative when it comes to wanting to make sure that speed, accuracy, and we're efficient on getting our cars on and off the site. So again, tonight, I think I'm just here to answer any questions that you may have on this proposed project. As I said, we are very much in the preliminary stages right now. Our goal would be hopefully by the end of the year to submit something to the city and move forward with the entitlement process. But really for tonight, I would just like to hear any comments, questions that you may have so we know how to address and move forward.
Before we get to the questions, let me just give a little bit of context to the area that we're talking about and some of the issues that I will expect our city government to look at. First, it's correct that the North Lake specific plan describes North Lake Avenue between Orange Grove to Mountain. Thank you, to Mountain as the food court garden, and that was that was by design, believe it or not. A lot of you in this room will recall when we went through the discussions on the North Lake specific plan, there was a lot of concern that if we allowed mixed-use development on that stretch of the avenue between Mountain and Orange Grove, that state density bonuses would allow overdevelopment of that stretch. And so if we allowed mixed use and we said it should only be 2 stories, that developers would come in and demand density uses in order to make the numbers work and demand more floors. And that was problematic for a couple of reasons. One, it abuts immediately to single-family residential neighborhoods. And 2, one of the issues that I expect the staff to look at carefully is the traffic and traffic patterns. Particularly right now, we've all seen when the Starbucks went in, some of the problems that that's caused in terms of traffic. And so it was by design, at the request of people who live immediately adjacent to that stretch of the avenue, that we maintained the use there as essentially a commercial use for fast food operators. And so keep that in mind. That was a decision that was intentional, and that was a decision that the City Council approved at the request of the surrounding neighborhoods. So there, we succeeded, but the result is that we're unlikely to get new uses beyond fast food uses. And so that was the trade-off. Yes. There are a couple of chicken places already there. Must be. So it's like the commercial, who's asking for more chicken? The cows. Yeah. So I don't know that it's limited to fast food. It's limited to particular uses, and really, because it's so limited, it discourages some change in some uses, and we should be honest about that. Yeah, and so we'll let Jennifer answer the specifics. It's not that we froze it in time But we sort of did by limiting the type of uses that can go into that stretch of the avenue. And we moved density further south on the avenue. So I want to be clear about that. We didn't eliminate the number of housing units or mixed-use units. We made an educated decision to move density closer to the gold line along Lake Avenue and maintain the integrity of the single-family residential neighborhood by limiting the uses along Lake. Sure.
Yeah, just to elaborate that on a little bit more, what Councilmember Gordo is talking about is we did concentrate the housing towards the TOD, the transit-oriented development districts, so that there's proximity to the light rail station. And this site is designated as low commercial. It's intended to be a commercial use. It doesn't necessarily have to be fast food. It doesn't have to be a restaurant, but it's intended to be a low-scale commercial development that provides a buffer to the single family. It has a lower height limit, a lower intensity. We have low, medium, and high commercial, with a good example of high being further down on Lake, where you have some of the taller office buildings. That's an example of high commercial. So what we envision here is low commercial, because we recognize where it's at and its proximity to single family. I think one of the other reasons that the drive-through is attractive is because we don't allow drive-through businesses anymore. So there's a prohibition on a number of uses as part of the North Lake specific plan, and one of those is additional drive-through businesses. So if you have a drive-through business now, it can be demolished and it can be rebuilt as long as it's not any larger than the drive-through business that was there before. And that process requires an entitlement. It has to go to public hearing, and there's a whole process that goes with that would happen whenever they submit their application. But I think by the fact that we don't allow any more drive-throughs, those spots that have them now are probably attractive to turn over for other users.
Any net new drive-throughs are not allowed.
Correct.
But I think it's important that we all understand that if it's an existing use, it can continue to be used. We just do not allow in the North Lake specific plan net new drive-through. So you can't establish a new car. It's actually a car-related use.
Yeah, it's vehicle-related uses.
Okay. We'll give let me first respond to the conditions. So as Jennifer stated, any proponent of a fast food location along Lake Avenue, a replacement, if you will, if they want to tear it down, they have to build it the same size, and they can rebuild the drive-through. But they have to go through the conditional use permit process, and that's a discretionary action where the city can impose conditions such as cleaning up your own trash, hours of operation, traffic, queuing, all of the conditions that come along with a conditional use permit. And so that's why I gave the disclaimer that I gave earlier, because depending on what those conditions are or are not, the matter may end up before the city council. So that's a quick answer to yes, we can do that. Why don't we? And then there was a follow-up question regarding their position, reputation. Yeah.
Well, as Chick-fil-A, we cannot discriminate. It's illegal, and we don't discriminate. We have operators, a handful of operators throughout the country who are LGBT, but we cannot discriminate. It's illegal.
Mark, let's go. Why don't we go in sequential order from right to left? Ms. Tellini? Well, it's in large part driven by a combination of the land use, and we heard Jennifer talk about the limited commercial use, and that is in part a driver, and then the other driver is investment, whether it's investment on the part of a private party or government. Those are the two drivers.
I can expand on that just a little bit. The code allows a variety of different uses there, as I was talking about. There's office, retail, different types of commercial uses. We react to a proposal that comes into us. So once the city gets a proposal, then we will apply our development standards to that. So we don't control what comes in, but we will work on it once it does. And there are development standards, setbacks, parking, height, all those things that control the development, the envelope essentially that's on that property that we would apply once they actually submit a proposal to us. Nothing's been submitted to us yet.
This is a private transaction, and so, nothing's been submitted to us by, my understanding from the staff, by Chick-fil-A or anyone else for that matter. Now, I point out the specific plan because we're in the process of reviewing the specific plan, and this may be one of the subjects, the zoning in that part, on that part of the avenue that we revisit. Okay, so we're moving Topher. No, clearly we're not seeing the results that we planned in the specific plan, and so I think you're correct that as we go through the revision of the North Lake specific plan, we have to keep that in mind, that maybe we got it wrong and we need to rethink what we incentivize there.
So typically we do not select an operator until we're maybe about a year prior to construction. I can't guarantee that's going to be her, but we will, accept applications, and she will also go through that process to potentially be the multi.
And also, like Victor Carl's Jr., are they on that business, or how does
I think they're closed down now, is my understanding. Yeah. They're still open? I was told their closing is imminent or they were closed, but it sounds like they're still hanging on there. So, thank you, Jordan. Let me just clarify one thing. The gentleman who left now, it's not predetermined. There is a discretionary action. We just have to allow the process to proceed.
Is Carl's closing anyway? This is what I'm not clear on at all.
So Roberta, it sounds like Carl's Jr. is closing.
It sounds like what?
It's going to close. It's either closed or closing. Yes. Yeah. No, we are not leasing it. The operator, and maybe will you be purchasing the property or leasing the property?
Yeah. So we will enter in a lease with the property owner, and we will lease the property for long term. Yeah.
What are the terms of the lease? Are they 10-year leases?
No, we do long-term leases, so typically they're about 25 years, plus options for renewal.
And for the investor, did you say that it's only $10,000?
So the operator, we call them operators, they pay the company $10,000 once they're accepted.
They open up.
Yes, that is correct. Yes.
Yes, sir, and then we'll move right to the center of the room.
How sure are we that Carl Jr. is moving from that place?
Well, again, so the question is, how certain are we that? Do you have land control?
No, we don't.
So the question is, how certain are we that Carl's Jr. is going to lease the property? Do you have land control?
Currently, no. We're still in lease negotiations with our landlord.
All right, start at the back and move forward.
No, so the one on East Colorado, I would say the square footage for that is about 4,500 square feet. This is about 2,400, yeah.
And how are you accomplishing, so I've got a question now. So how are you accomplishing the reduced size? Are you going to have eating inside, or are you cutting out?
Yeah, maybe I can explain that a little bit. So this is a 2,400 plus or minus square foot building. Our kitchens are really large, I'll be honest. Our kitchens are 2,200 square feet. So you can only imagine there's no space for interior seats. So this will have outdoor patio. We're proposing it right now kind of in, I guess it would be on the east side at the kind of near the entrance of the drive-through area. There's that yellow shaded area. And we are also looking at providing some seating up on Lake Avenue as well.
So the question is, do you have a sitting area for dining inside of the building?
There is no inside dining area. It's the only thing that's inside is bathrooms. So, and then obviously our kitchen.
And so you're de-emphasizing the sit-down and emphasizing the drive-through?
That's correct.
At this point, there's no proposal before the city staff or the city council, so we really have no role at the moment. The city has no role at the moment until there's an actual application for discretionary action or action by the city. And then at that point, the city staff will make a determination as to the completeness of the application, as to the appropriateness of the use, and issue a determination. That determination then becomes appealable.
Correct, yes. So we have, under state law, we have 30 days once an application comes in to review it and determine if it has everything that we need, and we deem it complete, and we'll set a hearing date. If we need additional information, we deem it incomplete, and we work with the applicant on the additional information that we need. After we deem it complete, we would route the application to the various city departments, transportation, public works, fire, all those groups, and we'll work with them to get their input to do any necessary studies that would need to be done. I'm sure we would need to do a traffic study for this, in addition to some other studies, and then that all informs what would be our recommendation. We don't know what the staff recommendation is until we go through that analysis. If we are to recommend approval, then we would attach a variety of conditions that come from the planning department as well as all the other departments. We send a public notice for the hearing officer meetings 2 weeks in advance of the hearing. There's a notice that goes out within a 500-foot radius of the site, and we also post the site with notice boards for a project that like this that we know that there's so much public interest on. We could also set up a mailing list so that we can notify anybody that's interested that might be outside of that radius. We would send everybody the notice and let you know when we were going to have the hearing. We have that hearing before the hearing officer. If the project were to be approved, it is appealable. It's appealable whether or not it's approved or denied. If it's denied and the applicant wants to appeal that decision, they could do that too. And the appeal goes to the Board of Zoning Appeals, which is a group of the Planning Commission. And then that decision is ultimately also appealable to the City Council.
Yeah, please.
Okay. So I'll start with, you're going to have to help me. So your first question, your first comment about the
drive-through, the traffic on Boylston, people illegally go counter
right.
and down my street, twice as many cars come down my street as up, which is not.
So as Jennifer mentioned, I'll probably have to do a traffic analysis as well too, and that will take that into consideration on how we can, potentially not have our customers turn that in that direction. Your second comment about the speaker boxes, one thing I didn't mention is a lot of our stores are adjacent to residential, for example, the one on East Colorado. And we actually have this really cool speaker box where it changes with the volume levels outside. So when it's really, really quiet outside, the levels are very, very low. And then,
The problem is it's on Lake, and Lake is always loud.
well, but our drive-through, actually, the entrance is closer to, yeah. Well, not Boylston, but I'm sorry. You can enter in off Boylston, but it's closer to, it's on the other side. You can't, those are things that the traffic analysis would look at as well too. And then your third comment about trash pickup. So one of the things about our operators that they do is, it's kind of actually in the operator agreement that they'll sign with us, and they will actually pick up trash every day, because and then with us being closed on Sunday, you can sometimes imagine some of our stores get in and out's trash, like wherever we are too. So our operators are constantly walking their property, and we would agree to something. I know McDonald's had to agree to something about clean a little further around the radius of their restaurant, and we would be amenable in doing something like that as well too.
Mike, I'm going to bounce right over here, and then we'll go back.
Yeah, I just had a question. The footprint you're proposing, you have no way of accommodating any indoor seating, it's just going to be patio seating?
That is correct.
Well, I think the question was, there's no way of accommodating. I think there's a way of accommodating. You're just choosing.
We're just choosing. That is correct.
None.
Right, and I will say a site that I worked on in Venice, so Venice Beach, we had a really big outdoor patio area, and we ran into some similar comments after we opened, and we went back, and so we created now an outdoor patio that it actually is really covered and enclosed to provide that ability, because that does not have interior seats as well. It is actually, surprisingly, yeah. Yeah, we've ran numbers on, although we call this like a drive-through only, but they're seats. So then we've ran numbers and we still have the same ratio.
Does everybody understand the question? And it's an important question and important answer. So the question is, if you're not providing indoor seating, and I'm understanding that you're emphasizing the drive-through, how is it that you maintain the ratio of 50% drive-through, 50% seat eating inside of the facility or at the facility. And the answer is that you still maintain that ratio. Interesting. Well, so let's ask the first question is, do you have a timeline as to when you, should you proceed, when you might submit an actual proposal and plan?
Yeah, I would say
Application.
an application would be submitted before the end of the year. That is correct.
No, I think the revenue is based on sales tax. It wouldn't be based on whether it comes from a car or from sit down. Yeah, there's no difference that I'm aware of. Yes, sir. And then Mike. That's a good question.
Yeah, so typically we'd like to say an average Chick-fil-A, and this is just average, generates about 60 to 75 jobs. But we don't hire, as corporate, we don't hire the team members. It's the operator who hires the team members. For a team member, the operators will set the minimum, will set the wages, but we pay above minimum wage.
But you don't dictate like that they have to have health insurance and all that?
Operators take care of all of that, yep. It's a variation of full and part-time employees. For pay? Again, I don't set that. Like, I can't tell you how many. I don't know. To honestly tell you the truth, I do not know.
How many employees are there at the the Colorado location?
I think she has probably about 80 to 90 employees, and there's about 4 shifts a day, I would say. That part I don't know. I can get that information, but I do not know. Again, we don't handle the team members. That's all on operators.
Important questions. Mike, and then we'll go to Joe. I think the access question is an important one, and that's one that the staff will have to consider. Well, let me say this. It sounds like, is your ingress and egress off of Boylston, or? And so ingress and egress will be important for queuing purposes and traffic. In terms of closing it off, we'll have to consider things like, full closure. We'll have to consider fire department needs and everything else.
Right. Yeah, all of that are items that we would do as part of the traffic study that's required for the conditional use permit. So,
okay. The purpose of having the staff here is so that they can take into account all of these comments, and that's one of them, Mike, the use in Boylston. Joe, and then we'll come back. Yeah. Joe?
So it's a good question. So when we select sites, we run research and strategic and figure out what's, projections. For this one, we feel that probably there will be somewhat of an impact on the East Colorado location. So the question earlier was that would she be the operator here? I don't know, but we do know that there will be some impact. Our average check average typically is about $12 to $13. And we haven't really actually, I can't say that. I don't have the numbers on how many transactions we anticipate here in order to be viable. But that is something that we can further present. That is correct. Yes. I just don't have that information with me tonight.
So the question, if staff determines, if it's determined that this is an intensified use of a drive-through that's going to add 300, 400, 500, whatever number of cars, can we, as one of the conditions, ask for improvements like a median or a light, a street light? Because Bob's correct. That little stretch there, people make left-hand turns, illegal turns. I think that's changed, but you're correct that it was up there for quite some time. Yeah.
Right. So just real quickly, once the application gets submitted, some of the things that the Transportation Department will look at is we will require a traffic analysis. we will require a queuing analysis that looks at how far back cars are being, backing up into the roadway potentially. We will look at driveway locations and the number of driveways. We'll analyze and look at how people are getting into and exiting the facility. So if there is a need for protected left turn lanes or medians in order to limit those left turn lanes or actions in and out, those are all things that we can condition. We will also look at pedestrian access, and if there's anything that we identify that would be needed in order to improve pedestrian safety, then that may also be part of the conditions that are placed upon the operator.
It's too small for commission level, but it would be staff level, based on the fact that it's on a major corridor, and that is, it could be called up by the design commission, so it could potentially end up in front of the commission. Right, so there are design guidelines that would be applied to the project. When I said we're going to route that application to different sections, one of them is our design and preservation section. So they would be looking at the project and they would let the applicant know all the applicable design guidelines that they're subject to, and they would be reviewing that as part of the project as well. Yes, yes. So the applicant, I don't know who they're going to be. If it happens to be a corporate entity and then an operator takes over the entitlement, the operator would be required to comply with all of those conditions of approval. So it would be the operator at the site that would be required to comply with those.
So one of the things, as I said, once we select an operator, they're given this big handbook of rules and follow-throughs and all that stuff. And we also provide the conditions of approval that were set onto us from corporate. So things like cleaning up around the site, all of those things, the operators provided that, and they are to follow them. It's the agreement with Chick-fil-A. We get notices from the city. Oh, and go ahead.
We're in charge of enforcement, so I just wanted to answer that question. The good thing about a conditional use permit is that it's an entitlement. It's something that is a privilege that is granted. They're not guaranteed that by right, which means that we have a public hearing, we have conditions, and the conditional use permit could be revoked. So if we're having problems with someone complying with their conditions of approval, we would have a revocation hearing, and we can actually revoke that entitlement and take that CUP away. Typically what happens is if we're hearing problems, we're hearing complaints, we will get code enforcement involved. They'll engage and we'll work on them to comply. If they don't comply, we'll bring them in for a hearing. We'll give them an opportunity to comply, and if they don't, then we will revoke that entitlement. This is not a change of use, technically. It's going to go from fast food to fast food, but there will be a traffic study that's required, and it will take into consideration the existing conditions that are going on now. And if the conditions have changed from when the previous use was operating to the use that is operating now, it will take into those conditions into consideration. You may have new businesses that have come online or additional traffic that wasn't there before, and so that's why we will do a new traffic study each time it comes in. Even though it's technically the same use, we still would require a traffic study to update those numbers.
Okay. Another issue to be considered. Okay. So with that, let me just give a few comments of issues that maybe the staff, and if there is an application, it sounds like there may be by the end of the year, that ought to also be considered. You know, we've not talked very much about the design. I think the design, placement, issues of noise, into the neighborhood, lighting into the neighborhood is important. I think, you know, one of the issues that that certainly we should all pay attention to is the impact to the neighborhood, and a buffer separating the use and the parking lot from the neighborhood. Those are all important uses. And then, you know, one of the reactions that I hear most to fast food uses is the finishes on some of the buildings. You'll recall that when Walgreens went into North Lake Avenue at the corner of Orange Grove and Lake, we spent quite a bit of time talking about the design and the appropriateness of the design for taking into consideration the historic neighborhood. We took into account the importance of the finishes that went into that property, into that use. And so, you know, what I'm seeing here is a run-of-the-mill box that we see everywhere else. And so I think, you know, the design, the finishes, the placement, this is, unlike some of the other uses, a new Well, it's a new structure, and so I would encourage all of you to think those issues through as well, and I would encourage the staff to think through some of those issues, and also any applicant who comes forward with either a Chick-fil-A or a new Carl's Jr., whatever it may be, to think through some of those issues. And I think the issues of traffic, circulation, all of the issues that have been raised are important issues. Recall that, you know, notwithstanding what was said about it's predetermined, it's not predetermined. You know, this city and all of you will have a say because there is a discretionary action. Chick-fil-A or any other business, if they are unwilling to meet conditions that the staff may come up with, that the city council or the planning commission may come up with, if they're unwilling to meet those conditions, then they don't have the right to operate here, whoever it may be. And that applies for every business that is required to have a conditional use permit. As Jennifer said, if the conditional use permit conditions are violated, then that conditional use permit can be pulled. And so I want to encourage all of you to stay engaged. I want to thank you for showing up tonight and making your opinions known. As you can see, people are pretty passionate about uses along Lake Avenue, as our guests have seen. And I want to thank you for the opportunity to serve as your representative. I can assure you that this matter is going to receive a lot of attention because it's an important part of our city. It's immediately adjacent to a single-family residential neighborhood, and we're all interested in what goes into this stretch of Lake Avenue. And so, what kind of business? And so, with that, unless there are any other comments or questions, I think we'll adjourn the meeting. Mike? Oh, the specific plan. We'd committed to ending the meeting. Why don't we give?
I can do it in 1 minute.
Well, I want to be respectful of everyone's time, but why don't we give, since we talked about the North Lake specific plan, why don't you give the timeline of the specific plan, because currently the specific plan is open for all intents and purposes, and we're revising it.
Right.
So
we're about midway through a 3-year update. We're updating 8 specific plans at the same time, which is a very aggressive effort, but we're really excited and proud to be doing that. We're spending a lot of time out in the community. We just completed our round 2 workshops, and so right now staff is taking all the input that we got from the last series of workshops on all the specific plans, and we're going to be going back out to the community for round 3 workshops sometime next year, early next year. You'll start to get information and flyers, and we're going to be presenting concepts at those meetings. So the first 2 meetings were listening, and now we're going to come back and say, okay, this is what we've heard, so here's our ideas, what do you think? And we're going to really start to formulate and give you something to respond to in terms of what our ideas are for some of the changes in the specific plan area.
How close are we sticking to what we have on North Lake?
We don't know yet. So we're still taking in everybody's input, and we're not fully done with outreach. We do have these flyers that we have here tonight. This is going to be our next event that we have that I'm excited to talk about. It's actually our youth summit. And so I know we're not all youth here, but we have youth in our lives that we would like to involve in the future of the city. And so we really encourage you to take a flyer. This event is going to be on October 19th, and you can come and bring youth in your lives and have them give us their ideas on what they would like to see for these specific plan areas. So we're still getting some input. We're going to be giving an update to the Planning Commission in the fall, probably in October or November, and the City Council after that. And then we will be doing the round 3 workshops again early next year, so look for some information on that.
okay. Questions on the specific planning process? No? Oh. What?
Regarding the matter of Chick-fil-A, are there any other applicants competing with Chick-fil-A?
It's a private transaction, so we are not aware of any other applicants. Do you have any competition that you want to tell us about? Yeah. I think it's a private transaction, so we don't know who Carl's Jr. or the owner of that property may be.
There are other applicants
Yeah.
who want to open their restaurant.
Yeah, we simply don't know. Carol, you'll have the final question.
On
Right, so those are preliminary concepts, and then staff's evaluating those with our consultant, and then we're going to come back with our proposal based on everything that we've heard on the draft concepts. No, we have not. No. That will be in round 3 workshops. No, we just completed all the round 2. So round 3 is going to be where we start presenting the concepts. Yeah. Right, so far, yes, I'm sorry. Yes, correct. Yes, yes. As we work through them, then we'll start posting them on the web. Correct.
Okay, thank you everyone, and again, thank you for the privilege of representing you.